Okay, we're recording. I'm using my remote control thing here. So, wow, I feel like I'm in your face this time around. So I'm using my cell phone, my iPhone camera. I have it on reverse. So I'm going to test out this method. I have already done my primers. Now that is in there, and I feel like that is nice. I'm going to take this translucent powder. I got some cheap stuff for this step. I'm going to take this on a Sigma E40. This is my normal transition blending brush right here. I'm going to just put a little bit of this translucent powder all over. I'm going to just place this on my eyes right here on the eyelid. Make sure that it's fully covered. Woo, this powder is dusty. But you definitely want to make sure that you are setting your primer. I'm going to be switching back and forth between these mirrors here, I can already tell. All right, so now that that's done, now I'm going to show you guys these Cara Beauty palettes. Now, I got these specifically for these transition shades. If you can see, there's some really good shades right there that make awesome transition shades. This one is more. Okay, let's talk about these palettes right here. They have really kind of long names. This is the ES2515. It's the Smoky Rose, and this is the ES2315 Smoky Sand. I got these palettes specifically for the transition shades, so let's take a look at them. And I always keep this plastic piece. I always used to throw them away, but eyeshadows in general just have a lot of powder kickback. Some, if they're highly pigmented, they will have more chalky, powdery kickback, but they all have it, and so that prevents the powder from getting onto the mirror. And the thing I like about the phone camera being in reverse is that I can actually show these up close and see if I'm having any glare or reflection, and making sure that you guys are able to see these colors. I got this palette, this one's a Smoky Rose, specifically for this row right here and these shades right here, because they do have a beige and a bone shade, which is great for setting your primer. And then these are just excellent transition shades when you're doing like a plum or a rose look. And this one here is the Smoky Sand. And I'm in love with this palette because I love neutrals and I love beiges and light peach colors, and this palette has that. So I specifically got this palette for these shades right here because these are really excellent transition shades, and these shades are really good for setting your primer. And even though like you set your primer with like translucent powder, it's still, I do, and I think it's still a good idea to go ahead and just put a layer of like a bone shade. Now, you don't have to double dip like that. You can just set your primer with one of these. Okay, guys, so we're going to talk a little bit about makeup brushes, specifically transition shade brushes. This is a collection of some of my favorites. I have the Morphe Babes Faves set in here. I have some MAC, some Sigma. There's Laura Mercier in here, Bobbi Brown. There's a Marc Jacobs. I think I have a couple of NARS brushes, but this is just a collection of some of my favorite go-to eye brushes. And we're going to apply a transition shade using this palette because, like I said, I got these specifically for transition shades. So let's take a look at, where are my transition shade brushes? Okay, these two right here. These two are my favorite brushes for applying a transition shade because they're light and fluffy, and you just get a nice wash of color with these. You get kind of an airbrushed look with these, as opposed to something like this, which is really thick, doesn't have a lot of movement, and is so densely packed. So the two favorite brushes, this one is the Sigma E40, and this is the Morphe E27. I'm gonna try to close up here just so you guys can see the size of these brushes. They're really similar in terms of like the height of the bristles, and the fact that they're both really kind of free-flowing just gives you that really nice airbrushed, smooth, really kind of fluffy blend going on. And that's why I like these two for the transition shades. So for today, I'm gonna go, okay, so now we're gonna apply the transition shades, and I'm using the Sigma E40, and this is the Cara Beauty, this is the Smoky Rose palette, and I'm gonna go into Salmon and Mauve Pink. which are these two shades right here. This is salmon and this is mauve pink. And I'm going to take them both on the Sigma E40. And let me just say that when I do my transition shade, everybody's bone and everybody's eye is different. So I follow the natural contour of where this brow bone is. And I will take my first transition shade just slightly above that brow bone and just slightly below. So I'm priming the area and I'm getting ready to introduce other colors. So I always keep the first transition shade really light. I usually end up using 2 or 3, and then I'll have like another color or 2 in the crease. So I usually end up with like 4 or 5 colors, and I just love to blend, blend, blend. I like everything to have that kind of gradient airbrush look. Sometimes that doesn't always happen if I'm in a hurry and I don't blend out the colors the first time. So you always want to blend in the beginning. You also want to take very little product in the beginning, and you can always build up the intensity in the color. If you take too much right off the bat, like I've always said, you get that watercolor look, and then blending is just like a bitch. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and take some salmon and some mauve pink. I'm going to just swirl it on the top of the brush. I'm going to tap off the excess, and I'm going to start on the outer corner of my eye, and using circular motions, I'm just going to blend that in. And then I am going to use windshield wiper motion. And then usually after like the second or third, because I'm trying to build up a little bit of intensity with these colors, because these shades are really kind of light. So I'm going to, I gotta move over here so I can see here. So what I do, the other thing I like to do is, let me get this blended in here real quick. It's really hard to talk and apply shadow at the same time. Okay, so another thing that I like to do is I like to take a little bit of the color and extend it out. I like to flick it out a little bit because I've always liked that cat eye shaped. So whether I'm doing the first transition shade or the second or third or fourth color, whatever I'm doing, I sort of kind of follow that same pattern that I create with the first transition shade, which is kind of like that cat eye thing. So once I get the color kind of at the intensity that I want for the first transition shade, I start kind of flicking it out towards the top of this eyebrow so that it kind of starts that gradient look that I'm after. So now, all right, now I can see that this is nicely and blended because I use this really large fluffy brush, but if it was not, if there were any edges up there, I would just go in with a nude shade or even the bone shade, and I would just go slightly on the top line and just blend that in. Just make sure that that's nice and blended. That's just another step that you can do between each shade, just to make sure that each one is blended into the other shade or blended into your base color. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and build this up just a little bit more, and then we're gonna finish the video. So I just put some translucent powder here, and this helps for me because I'm doing kind of an extended kind of a cat eye shape, kind of creates kind of like the base outline for where the shadows kind of start and stop, because you really want to try to stay within that angle from the corner of your nose to the edge of your eyebrow. You want to kind of stay there. You don't want to be bringing shadow out like past there. Well, at least like I don't anyway. So this does a couple different things. If you're doing an edge at the end, it just kind of helps so that you can buff that powder in there and you'll get those edges kind of feathered. You won't have that really harsh line that like tape gives you. So that's why I use that powder. So what I'm gonna do is, and I actually took this down like a little bit lower than what I normally would, just like a couple centimeters, just to give me room to kind of flick out my shadow, because I like to get that extended shape, and I always start that with the first transition shade. So I already went in with salmon and this mauve pink on the first one. Now I'm going to deepen up that first transition shade just a little bit more, and I'm going to go into just mauve pink by itself. And take a little bit, I'm going to tap it off. I'm just going to deepen this shade up just a little bit. This is still my first transition shade that I'm working, and I'm going to start pushing that product upward and outward so that it's going up towards the brow, kind of creating that cat eye look. And if you start that off with your first transition shade and then you follow suit with your other shades, it makes everything kind of gradient. It makes kind of everything kind of follow along the same line. So that is why I start that with the first transition shade rather than waiting until I get to the end. I'm going to start by flicking that up just a little bit. And then I'm going to really make sure that my brush is tapped off. I'm just trying to build up the color just a little bit. These shades are really light on my skin tone, so I have to go in a few times to build it up. Now, I can see that there's no harsh edges right here. It's pretty much blended in. But again, I can take this shade right here, this pale pink. I'm going to go into this one. I'm going to just show you guys what I mean by this. You take just like the lightest shade. Even you can take the bone shade, so you can even mix the two. And even kind of feather your first transition shade even more into the base by just grazing the edge of that color. And just making sure that even that first transition shade is blended into your base color. Okay, so that is nice and smooth. So that's what I do for my first transition shade. I wish I had more time to film this. I do want to test all of this out with the lighting and kind of see how everything looks. And I want to get this powder off my face. So everyone have a great day. I'm going to be anxious to test this out and see how this all looks. So everyone have a great day. Bye.